You've read Tolle, you've watched Rupert Spira's YouTube videos, you went to the retreat, you bought the t-shirt, you had him sign the book. You learned that you're not your thoughts, right? Until you had a bad day. Weren't you supposed to have had an awakening by now? Something is definitely missing. I hear this all the time. Someone's been meditating for 20 years. They know exactly what Tolle is pointing at, and they're beating themselves up because they still can't stay present. They understand the concepts, and yet nothing has changed. Awakening is elusive. I discovered what was missing about 40 years ago, and I've been using it in my practice ever since. Today, I'm going to share this missing key with you. It's simple, utterly simple, overlooked. No wonder it has been overlooked. It is the one thing that none of the teachers tell you. Welcome to Mastering Thought. I'm Dr. Mark Waller. I've been a marriage family therapist for nearly 30 years, and I'd invite you to soar with us. I'm dedicated to your transformation, not just feeling good for a few days, but the awakening you want so badly. So let's start with Tolle. What does Tolle tell you to do? He says, observe the thinker. I love Tolle. Create space between you and the thought by practicing presence in the now. Well, there are two problems with this. Number one, the mind cannot practice presence. It's a lot like telling somebody to be spontaneous. How do you be spontaneous? He describes his awakening as a disidentification from thought. He literally wakes up at 2, 3 in the morning, he's depressed, he's suicidal, and he has this thought, I can't live with myself any longer. And when he steps back to observe the thought, because the thought makes no sense, he says he disidentified. We're going to find out what that means. Does he tell you how to disidentify? I can't find it other than his instruction to just practice presence. If you can find it, let me know. Put it in the comments because I'd like to research it. Then there's Rupert Spira. I love Rupert Spira. He gives you the most beautiful map of the territory, awareness, the nature of the I, the self that does not exist. And then he seems like he kind of leaves you there. The rest, you're supposed to rest as awareness in which everything arises, which is exactly correct. Practice awareness. Well, how can you practice awareness? Awareness is something that must be discovered. Then there's Ramana Maharshi. He's kind of the father of modern awakening. His how is called self-inquiry. Trace every thought back to its source. Ask, to whom does this thought arise? The instruction is profound, and it works. Sometimes, in an ashram, in silence, with a living teacher, but it doesn't survive contact with next Tuesday. How about Michael Singer? He says, relax and release. When something arises, a feeling, a reaction, a thought, don't contract around it. Let it pass through. You are the witness, not the thing being witnessed. Also true. That is his how, but relax and release assumes you can already find the witness seat. It doesn't tell you how to locate it when the thought already has taken the wheel of your life, which is every time you actually need it. So let's look at some things. The voice in your head sounds exactly like you. It feels like you. It has your tone and timbre. It seems like it's been there forever. It actually is an aspect of egocentric speech that children learn when they learn language, and eventually goes inside and becomes the voice in your head. And it sounds like you. It's been there for years. That's what makes it invisible. Tolle calls it the ego. So do I. Singer calls it the inner roommate. Maharshi calls it the false self, all of which are true. They're all describing the same thing, a voice you have mistaken to be yourself for your entire life. Every one of those teachers was pointing at the same process, disidentification. Let me tell you what that is. You see the shirt I'm wearing? I identify this as my shirt. Now, if I took this shirt off and I sold it to you, I would no longer identify it as my shirt. I would know that it was your shirt. Disidentification is the same thing. We identify ourselves as the voice in our heads. There are two reasons for that. Number one, as I said before, it's been there forever. And number two, the voice in your head is being generated by a network in the brain called the default mode network, which in and of itself creates a sense of self when it actually speaks. But disidentification is not a philosophy. You can't stand around saying, that's not my thought, and expect to get results. It is the real-time realization that there is a voice that is speaking that no longer feels like you, and you don't need to own it or give it any authority. That's real disidentification. Here's what none of them told you. You cannot observe a thought that has already become you. When the voice is running, when you're inside it, there's no distance to work with. You can't step outside something you don't know you're already inside. That is why the instruction fails every time you actually need it. Thought cannot be defeated from inside of the world of thought. So you have to practice disidentification somewhere it can't fail, on thoughts that carry no charge. Think about this for a second. The brain is this gigantic survival machine. And when you're triggered, when you're emotional, fight or flight has been activated in the brain, and the entire brain now thinks it needs to survive an attack. Well, you can't do spiritual work when your brain is completely overcome with those kind of emotions. That's why we practice on trivial thoughts, like what's for dinner, the email you forgot to send, thoughts with no power over you. Just watch one drift in. Now, we're not generating a thought. We're just waiting for one to drift in, just like clouds drifting in front of the sun. Recognize the process of thought is happening. Your brain cannot observe and think at the same time. In order for you to realize this, you must be the observer, since the me voice keeps going away. Why does this happen? There are two networks in the brain. One is called the task positive network. It's kind of centered up here in the front of the forehead. The other is the default mode network. The default mode network is the network in the brain that produces the narrative, the story, the voice in your head. Those two networks are negatively correlated. So when you're paying attention, it suppresses the default mode network and the voice in your head goes away. So your brain cannot observe and think at the same time. In short order, when you practice this, you realize you must be the observer since the voice keeps going away and the observer is outside of the world of thought. So by waiting until we're having trivial thoughts and the brain is not in fight or flight, we step outside of the world of thought to become the observer so we can have this observation post that's watching the process of thought from the outside. Something happens when you do this enough on ordinary thought, not a difficult one. You catch it in real time and you realize that voice is not me. Not as something you've read or believe in, as something you're experiencing in that moment. That's the moment everything changes that these teachers are describing. Awakening, and you found it observing a thought about your grocery list. I know that sounds strange, very counterintuitive. In that moment, you disidentify and you know that you're not the voice in your head. Game over. Once you've had that experience, you don't need to graduate to difficult thoughts because something more fundamental has changed. You haven't learned to manage the voice better. You've seen through it. Your relationship with thought itself has shifted. This is not a technique. That's what they were all pointing at. They just didn't tell you how to do it. So here's a roadmap to do this exercise. I call it moment mindfulness. Sit with your eyes open. Yes, with your eyes open. We don't want this confused as meditation or prayer. We want to be able to do this in our daily walk of life. We want to be able to notice when thoughts arise in our heads with our eyes open and just wait for the next thought. You're not generating a thought. You're just waiting for your own mental activity to start up. And maybe the next thought is, well, what if I don't have a thought? Or how long do I need to wait for a thought? That's a thought, isn't it? The instant you notice that you're thinking, those networks in the brain switch and the voice in your head goes away. That's it. That's the end of the exercise. You don't analyze it. You don't look for an outcome. You don't talk back to it and say, you're not my thought. You're not my voice. You don't do any of that. You just notice your own mental activity, and the instant you notice it, it goes away. That's the end of the exercise. Call it moment mindfulness. So in summary, Tolle, Spira, Maharshi, Singer were all pointing at something real. The observer position exists. Disidentification is possible. What was missing was the entry point, a way to practice it before you need it on thoughts that couldn't pull you in. Moment mindfulness is that entry point, not a technique for managing difficult thoughts. That's not what we're trying to do, but a practice that changes your fundamental relationship with thought itself. When the light bulb moment comes, and it will, you won't be managing the voice in your head. You will have stepped outside of it. Moment mindfulness is the missing piece that you've been looking for. I do one-on-one coaching. If you'd like some help, click the link below for a discovery call and we can get together and discuss it. Also, we have a free Facebook group. Feel free to join that. We have live streams every Thursday and every Monday. And also, you can take a quiz to find out how your mind actually works in the description below. Find out if you're an explorer or an analyzer. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it useful. Tune in again. Bye-bye.